Alright. They were really close. I mean, as close as any other couple I've ever seen. After 10 years, they still held hands in a restaurant. I'm married 11 years. And I don't pass a salt to my life. When George first found out how ill Barbara was, he just refused to accept it. He knew how serious it was. But there was no way she couldn't bear it. He just couldn't conceive of it. And Barbara, she wouldn't let on to a soul that anything was ever wrong. Her best friend at the funeral said to George, I just didn't know. She was a beautiful woman, Jimmy, in every way. But towards the end, you could see she had begun to slip. And George would go out for parties and dinner and would leave early, pretending nothing was wrong, especially not letting on to themselves. And then, one day George called me from the hospital. Very quietly and simply said, she's gone. And it surprised me because I thought by the time this was over, George would be broken into pieces. I mean, I expected a total crack up. And it surprised me how held together George was. So I met him as much as possible, called him all the time. And then I didn't hear from him for 5 days in a row. He wouldn't pick up my calls. So I called the building. And they told me that they didn't see him go in or out. I got plenty scared. So I went to the building. They let me in with the pass key. And there he was on the bed, in front of the TV. The TV was on, but no sound. There was a milk container lying next to him with a transfer. He must have lost some 8 to 9 pounds. And I said to him, hey George, are you okay? Why don't you pick up my calls? And he said, fine, just fine. And then he leaned over to hold my hand. And for the first time in a year and a half, real tears started to flow. He cried for hours that night. I couldn't even get him to eat. So next day morning, I called a doctor. He checked him into Mount Sinai. He was there for about 10 days, was in terrible shape. And his greatest fear was, I would commit him someplace. After he left from there, he stayed over at my place for a week. And I couldn't even get him to walk. His fear, his panic was that he wouldn't make it back home. Somehow I managed to get him to walk down the path. He wouldn't let go of my hand for a single second. And when we actually reached, he stopped and said, no George, take me back home. It's too far. After a few days, he went into a therapy. A really good doctor. But then he went for a month and suddenly he just decided not to go. He wouldn't explain why. So I called the doctor and the doctor explained that George was making a very deliberate effort not to get better. Because getting better meant letting go of Barbara, and he was not going to let that happen. And then one day, bang, he just left to Europe. And not new places. Those places where he has been with Barbara before. But when he came back, he seemed all better, all cheerful. So I thought, in my dumb, impulsive way, that he would want what I would want if I were in his place. Companionship. But I realized companionship for him and me were two different things. But he has good instincts. He knows what's right for him. And God knows what I offered wasn't really right. Until the day I saw you, sitting there with Kay. And I said, oh yes, that's for sure. I swear to you, Ginny, You are the best thing that would have happened to this man. I just hope it would have happened a little later. I'm sorry. But no matter how I say it, it doesn't come out right. But you wanted to hear it. And I felt the obligation that I should tell you this. I hope you understand this.